Thank you for being here. I'm really happy to see so many people. I'm really happy to be here. It's my first time in Ireland, so I'm really happy about that. The first subject for tonight is about Java, but for scripting, not JavaScript, the one you see everywhere in the browser. And all that came from looking at all the new stuff that came to Java recently. So when we talk about scripting, usually Java is not the first language that comes to mind. You might think about Bash or Python or even Perl or even JavaScript to that matter. There is a lot of things that comes to that. And for me, yeah, that's nice. Those languages are probably pretty nice, but every time I need to write a 5-line script in Bash, I already need to remember what's the shebang, so the hashtag bin something. Every time I forget about it. And don't start me on the syntax because Bash is not the most friendliest syntax ever. So either I say, I will not do that. I will do it next time. And next time never come to be honest. Or at some point I went up on the internet looking for how am I supposed to do that? And most recently, of course, I just asked Claude, can you write me a script that does that? Except that if I'm not an expert in the language, I'm probably not the right person to review this code. And some bad thing might happen. So I really would like to use a language that I know and I practice every day, like Java. And funny enough, while I was looking at it, I realized that I could use that. But to go to that, we need to go through a few steps. So for everybody that ever used Java, if you write a Java file and you want to execute that for a long time, you had to do javac, your file, then you get a class file, and then you can run Java this class file. If you want to write a script, really not the best use case because you don't want to compile stuff then run it. You just want to run it. You don't want to spend time. But right now, in fact, you can just run Java and your Java file. So I have a small demo. So I've decided to rewrite a simple list file, so the good old ls. And right now, if I just go run Java and say lists files, it's going to ask me a path, let's just say my current directory, and it can do that. And I'm just running Java. Does anybody knows for how long this feature was in the GDK? 11. So there is 14 versions since it's available, and apparently nobody knows about it. That's really a nicely use case because you can have any Java file and just do Java and run it. That's really useful. But if you're like me, you're probably thinking, hey, it's good, but one thing I hate with Bash is I write this script and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I would like to have other classes that I can use. And in Java 11, it was not available at all. You can run just one class, not more than that. It was part of the JEP 330. But with Java 21 and 22, they improved that. They say, hey, what if I could use more than one file? So I'm going to do something really easy. I'm just going to copy paste this, rename my class, let's say advanced. Rename this. So I want to use a few other classes. So I've prepared a few classes here so I can collect some metadata about my file and I have a nice printer for it. So I want to change a bit the code. So what I'm going to do is simply here remove this for each. I'm going to just do a map and I can use my file metadata. And call from file. There is a nice method that's converted for me, so I don't have to do anything. And then I can do simple toList and call var, so I have this list of files. Here we go. And now I want to do simply call my new service that can pretty print that. So new file. And I forget the name of this class, file printer service. Printer service, and I can call a method on it, say pretty print files. And I can just provide my files. So Here I'm using classes that are outside my current directory, they are in subdirectory, and I could even put other subdirectory. Those directories will behave just like packages, but because if you look at the import at the top here, it really imported just like packages, but I have no Maven POM or anything. I can just use it. And if I do again the simple Java thing here, I can run it, provide a path, and you can already see that there is a better printing, but I'm using other class. So with Java 21 and the JEP 458, you can now use more than just one class. The GDK will go look for you for all those classes in the subdirectory for you, so you don't have to think about it. It's really nice. It's already a good step in the right direction. But one thing that everybody complains about when they talk about Java, and usually they're not Java developer, but it's Java is verbose. You need to write a lot of code to do simple things. If you want to just do a simple hello world, you need to know about class, you need to know about public, static, even void, and all that. And that's really not nice for a young developer, but even when you want to write a script. A couple of years ago, I was at Devox, and one of the speakers there said one thing: all the code you don't write is the code without bugs. So if we can write less code and do the same things, it means less bugs for us, basically. So they introduce, it's part of the JEP 512, and the JEP 512, there is a lot of things in that. There is instance main method, there is a lot of the things. I would really recommend going to that because this JEP contains a lot of other JEPs that were completed with Java 21, 22, and were really totally finished with 25. And they decide to really simplify the way we can write simple things. So if I take my example here, not this one, I have a lot of boilerplate. I have this class, I have this public static void. And with those change, I can say I don't need a class, in fact. There is no use here. Public static, that's nice, but I don't really care about it. The arguments, I don't use it, so let's get rid of it. So that's already a lot of code that are gone. I can already show you it's still working because the GDK now look for this method, this void method, without looking for every public static and everything. But I can even go further. Let's say I want to say I want a default path, so I don't have to type everything something. I can use the default one. So let's say default path. Here we go. Yeah, that's when you do too much JavaScript, you end up using single quotes instead of double quotes. And I can use this, so I can simply say here, if my path is null or my path is empty, I can simply replace my path with the default one. And all that is allowed with Java 25. So you can define some variables, some fields without having a class. So you remove all these boilerplates. But if you look at this, you just want to read one line from the keyboard, and it's really not that easy. There is a lot of code just to read a line. Funny story, writing this talk, I remember that my first year in bachelor degree, in the school where I was, basically any project we wrote was importing one class that the teacher gave us. And this class was called in French keyboard, and was there just to read something from the keyboard. And at some point I understand why, because that's not that fun, and it's already been improved compared to what was available in the past, but it's still not that fun. So we introduced something a bit more easier. We introduced a new class in the JavaLang package, so you don't even need to import it. It's really nice. And let's say I can simplify my system out by just using IO. And IO is basically removing this system out. So that's already nice, but I still need this thing. In fact, you don't need it anymore. You can call io.readLine, and you can already say, okay, that's my variable. You can remove all this. So you don't need to know about exception, anything. And you get this, and you provide what they call a prompt. I think they try to, it's way more readable. If you're a newbie, that's really easy to read. Okay, I read a line from the terminal. I can just do the same thing. And I can again say something and it will do it for me. So I remove code, it's way more readable. And for scripting, if you need to write this block of code just to read an input from the keyboard, in a way, I really feel like writing assembly code at some point. Because it's a lot of boilerplate code just to get one input from the user. So that's basically it. But one key thing that we usually see in all those scripting language is what we call the shebang. So this is the hashtag something at the top of the file. And that's really nice because it allows you to say, just execute this file, and it knows how to do it. And in fact, in Java, it's also available. And again, it's available since Java 11. So it's nothing new. So I'm going to take this simple example, copy paste it. I'm going to simplify it again because I don't want all this code. I don't need it. Simplify this. I will not go through the I/O, but I think at this point you get it. I can say this. And what I'm going to do is just add here the Java version of the shebang. So I can just say hashtag user bin Java, and you can even provide the source version you want. So if you're like me using all the new feature, you probably need to say it's Java 25. But if using something that's there since Java 8, you could just say Java 8 and it will work for anything. You will need to do another thing is the file needs to have no extension. So instead of .java, it's just nothing. The last thing you need to do, of course, if you want to use it, is just add the execution rights on the file, because otherwise your system will not allow that. So I can just do that, and from that on, I can just do / my little script, say, let's do this, and it can do it. And the fun thing, if you have something like that, then you can move it into your binary directory and use it everywhere you want. So you can use a simple Java script as a real script on your computer, using every tool that Java offers you. So that's already pretty nice in my opinion. When we talk about script, usually we saw those two. We either see Python or Java. And for a long time, everybody was like, yeah, we love Java because that's that many line of codes. Right now, it's way, way better. We're still not at that level, the print, but it's really great. And I was curious about one thing, because some people say, hey, Kotlin is way better than Java. And if you look at Kotlin, if you use just Kotlin out of the box, you cannot even use the shebang syntax. To do that, you need the Kotlin script. That's a difference. It's the same language, but you need a different kind of file. So you need a KTS instead of a simple KT. And in that case, you can really use scripting things. But with Java, you can just use the same syntax. You just need this shebang and you can do the exact same code. You don't need to worry about, oh, am I in this environment or the other? I can use the exact same code. So that's pretty nice. And in any case, in Kotlin script, you're more like Python, but I think writing just void main is not that bad. But usually we don't want just simple scripts. That's really nice, but we want to go further. And we might say, I want to be able to have some more advanced feature like dependency, because if we look at the Java ecosystem, we have a lot of great libraries. It would be too bad not to use them and rewrite everything. And that's where JBang comes into the picture. So JBang is an open source project, and you can use it to import dependency. That's one key feature of that, but it goes way further than that. So JBang, you can install it in your computer, and let's say you have no Java, no IDE on your computer. you can just run jbang myfile.java, and it will try to pick up the Java version for you, download it for you, so you don't have to worry about that. It will just look at some shebang annotation that we will see further down. If you say jbang edit this file, and it will look for an IDE and say what do you want, and it can download the VS Code or something for you. So it's really a great tool from getting started from anywhere. One of the creator of jbang say that his best way to test jbang is go to his parent that don't do IT, take the computer that knows nothing about Java, install jbang and see if it can start any project with jbang and Java in a couple of minutes. And that's what jbang is able to do. So I talk about dependency because we have a lot of dependency in Java. We can use them to do a lot of things. And we would all like to be able to exploit this ecosystem. And jbang offers that. So I'm going to create a new file, say hello.java. As I said, I don't really need this class anymore, so just void main. And I want to do something nice. So the first thing I want to have, of course, is the shebang of jbang because it doesn't use the same as the one from Java. It's a bit different. So it's using something very similar because it's using user bin env, but using jbang. But if you need some dependency, it's really easy to use. So because we all talk about AI and stuff, I'm just going to use LangChain4j in this case. But if you look at what I'm using, I'm just using depths, and then I'm using the group ID, the artifact, and the version. So it's very similar to what you could do with Gradle or Maven, but I'm not using any of those tools. I'm just using a simple file. So I'm going to use some simple code to... Is there anybody is familiar with LangChain4j here? Just one hand. Okay, so I will explain a bit about it. I'm going to import all that, and of course it doesn't import properly, but okay, I will do it by hand. So what I'm doing here with LangChain4j is I'm creating a chat model. So a chat model is just a way to chat with an AI model. I'm providing a base URL. I'm using Olama, so it's a way to run local model on your computer. I'm just providing the URL on my machine. I provide the model name, so just what kind of AI model I want to run. I say I want to log the request and I build it. So with that, I have a chat model I can use. The thing I will do after that is just call the chat model, say, and of course, because it didn't import everything, that's the only thing with jbang, and I would say Visual Studio Code, it's from time to time, the import doesn't work that well. I'm going to do it the manual way, so I can import, and if I remember correctly, it's dev.langchain4j, model chat, and chat model. Here we go. So now I have that, I can simply say chat. I can provide a simple prompt. Give me 3 reasons why Irish beer is better than Belgian beer. Let's see. And of course, I want to print that, so io.print line. And I can take this. Here we go. So I have all that. I'm using dependency. So let's see how it goes. So instead of using Java, I'm going to use jbang. So it's a little difference. I can go just call my hello.java. So it builds something. It's going to connect to my local model, ask the question, and we should get the answer quite quickly. So we get an answer. I'll let you judge if it sounds reasonable. But I'm just using Java. I'm not playing with a lot of dependency. I have no POM, no Gradle. I'm just using a simple Java file. If I want to go even further, I could say just add the execution privilege on my hello file. And now I can just execute it as any Java file. So you can do it like that. So if you do the execution, because there is this shebang at the top, it's able to execute it just with a /. So again, you could move it to your bin directory and use it directly. So that's really great. But one thing you might want with scripts, you might want them to be really fast. You don't want to wait for the JVM to start up, because the JVM is sometimes not the fastest to do that. And there is a way to do that. It's GraalVM. How many of you knows about GraalVM? Couple of hands, so I'm going to explain. So GraalVM is a virtual machine, just like the JVM. It supports the JIT mode, so what we all use when we run a Java application. But it's also useful to create native binaries. So you can compile your Java application to a native binary. It means that you can run it just like any binary on your computer. It doesn't depend on Java. There is no more JDK running. It's all native. But it also means that if I build a native image on my Mac here, you will not be able to run it on a Windows or a Linux, because it's a binary. It's depending on the OS and everything. So we're going to try to do that. That's the part where I'm going to cheat a bit, because when you use GraalVM, there is one thing GraalVM doesn't really like, it's reflection. And we use a lot of that in most of our dependency and library. And Langchain4j, for instance, also use it, because we use Jackson and things like that, where it relies on reflection. But it doesn't mean that you need to have really something really complex. You can just provide a few options, because I showed you the depths, but you can use Java option and other things. So that's the moment, yeah. You can provide a lot of options. Here I provide native options for GraalVM, and I don't think really the content of it is really interesting. I'm going to use some JSON file that I will copy paste because I already prepared that will explain to GraalVM what it should allow as reflection, because GraalVM doesn't say you cannot do that, but if you do it, tell me what you're going to do with it. So it's a way to have a closed world view of your JVM. So here I'm going to create a reflect config.json. So let's do that. And I'm going to copy paste something I've prepared, because let's be honest, I'm not going to type all that in front of you. That's a lot of JSON. If you're wondering, all the code will be available after the presentation, so you can look at it if you want. So I'm going to do that. And what I need to do after that is just use JBang, and there is an export native, and I can provide my Java file. It will take a minute, because when you build a native image, you need to go through all your classes, all your dependency, look how we need to convert it to binary, so it will take a minute. Some people say we should have some lift music when you run it, so it's a bit more enjoyable. Sorry, it's still not there. But it will basically build a native application, just a binary, so you can read it, but that's really tailored for your computer. Of course, when you demo it, it's done, and tells me there is already one, but in any case, it will work. So I can just run it like this, and it's a binary. It will run the exact same application as before, but if I show you, it's binary, so my IDE will not be able to open it, and if I try to open it anyway, just say text, you will quickly realize that's something that you cannot read. That's really a binary. It's just bytes. It's built for your machine, and not only that. But you can also do that. So if you want a script that's really fast to start up and everything, that's the solution. But all that is great, but if I want to write a script, at some point I will probably end up trying to build a CLI in a way. Provide some parameters, some arguments, some options. And out of the box, JBang doesn't afford that. But JBang has a good friend. It's called Pico CLI. And this dependency basically is all about getting you started with a full CLI environment with a lot of things. And at this point, JBang is so fond of this that there is some CLI option in JBang. And if I remember correctly, JBang using Pico CLI to create projects. So the loop is complete. And there is an init command that allows you to create a new JBang application. And there are a few templates. If you use CLI, you have Pico CLI. But you can also use it if you want to create a web server or things like that. Because JBang is able to run any jar, any Java file. So you can even run some Quarkus application or even run a jar file that's somewhere on the network. It's able to do that. So in this case, I'm just going to create a simple CLI application. I called it ls. I need to synchronize my JBang so it gets properly all this stuff. So the first thing you need to know is it will use a notation to describe your new CLI. And you want to say call a command. And you can provide a name, a description, a version. And there is one thing that's really useful is this part, the mixin standard help option. This thing, when you enable it, will automatically provide a help menu for you. So if you create a CLI, usually you want to start it, you're not sure how to use it. By using this option, it already generates for you a help menu saying, hey, there is those options, those parameters available. It tries to help you. It will also give you the option for the version. Then there is the parameters. And as the name calls, I'm going to do the list file again. So instead of saying it's a greeting, because we all know greetings and hello words, so I can say that's the path. And I can provide default value. In this case, I will not provide it, so I have a more interesting demo, but you could provide default value. So let's say it's a path, a string, and that's the other thing I need to change. Path. Here we go. But I can also provide option. Let's say I want to list file and I want to be able to sort the file based on the name, something like that. So I can say it's a Boolean, and I could say private, it would be better. Boolean sorted. And when I do that, I can just annotate it with @option. And the @option has some attributes, names. It's a key one. It's basically giving you what type of option I need to provide to my CLI to execute it. But you could say, hey, I can just do -sort, or I could say -sort. I can provide more than one to have a really nice CLI. And the good thing is it's strongly typed. So you don't have to worry about, is it a string, is it a list, what is it? Because it does that for you. So instead of parsing the args that we have in the main methods, we can have something that's really easy to use. So I'm going to replace this with this whole thing. It's sorted, by the way, here. I'm going to do a few imports because, of course, I need those. Reindent everything. So I have really the same thing as you've seen before. I'm just trying to list the file. But this time I have those parameters, those options available for me. So again, I can use JBang, say ls.java. And I didn't provide any path, any option. And you see, it already gave me, hey, there is a missing parameter. You should provide me a path. There is a few things. You can have a sort. I didn't provide a description, but of course you can provide a description. Of course, I can say, hey, I need help. And it will give me the same thing. There's all those things. So if I this time do it properly and say, I'm just going to list those and say it needs to be sorted, it will do it. But you have a really full CLI. Here it's just a simple example, but you can even go further, like having a top command and some sub-command if you want. Because if I take just Pico CLI for a second, I'm just on the surface of what it can do. There is a lot of option in Pico CLI, and it's probably not that readable from the back. There is a lot of things you can do with that. And that's really interesting, that's really useful. If you want to build a full CLI with Java, that's the perfect tool for you. And like 2 weeks ago, that's probably where my talk would have ended, because there is already a few tools, you know how you can script. But there was something new that appeared like 2 weeks ago. And it came from the same guy that created shebang. Because at the end of last year, this guy said, hey, I think next year is going to be the year of the terminal UI. So the idea behind that is to have a UI in your terminal, just like when you use HTOP or something like that. Instead of having web UI, you can do it in your terminal. And he decided to create something. And 2 weeks ago, they released a version of that thing. And unlucky for you and lucky for me, the name is in French. It's called Tambouille. So Tembo UI, if you want to pronounce it in a more English way. And why is it called like that? It's because they are inspired from what exists in Go and Rust. And in Rust, the framework that allows you to do that is called Ratatouille. So it's again another French word, so we try to mimic it. And with that, you can create some really interesting UI in your terminal. Not just simple CLI or simple script, you can go way further than that. I was tempted to do a live code of everything, but let's be honest, it's way too much code and I don't think I have time for that. So I'm just gonna force to get my main branch, so I don't care about what I've done. And so I've already have all the files. You can see here my Git history, so you can go follow along if you want after that. And I've built basically what I call a GitHub inspector. So the goal is to go on GitHub and look at all the issues for a specific repository. And you might say, why is it doing that? What's the purpose? As I said, I'm part of the Belgian Java user group. And the Belgian Java user group is an open source project. So every event, every issue we have is in a GitHub repo with issues. So that's the way we manage the local jug. So I wanted a tool so I don't have to every time pull up GitHub and I can look at all the issues. So to do that, I'm using this Tembo UI. And there is different level in Tembo UI that you can use. I use the simplest level where you have a DSL to describe your full interface, but you can go way deeper than that. You can control the repaint of the screen. You can even go create your own widget if you want. So it's really new, but again, it's 2 weeks old. I didn't have time to dive that much in. But probably the things you should know is to do that, you need to extend the toolkit app. And there is one important method. It's called render. And in the render, you're going to build your UI. So I'm going to create some panel where I can provide a search field. There is an input field where you can put some data. You can, of course, create other panels, put them vertically, horizontally, a bit whatever you want. And of course, you can listen on some specific key event to say, okay, if the user press D, I'm doing something. And it ends up looking like a big if-else or something like that. But that's really, you can rebuild those things together to create a full UI. So let's do that. I'm just going to go shebang, GitHub history. Here we go. So you have a UI in your terminal. What I'm going to do is just copy the owner and the repository here. I can paste it. It will call the GitHub API and I can have all the issues there. I can go through there with my up and down keys. I can even say, hey, I want some more details on that. And I can see all the comments. And of course, I can go back home. One thing it doesn't do right now, if you zoom in a lot in your terminal, there is some things that are cut. So it's not fully responsive, but let's be honest, when we start talking about responsiveness in the terminal, we reach another whole other level. But I wanted to show you because that's something that people don't realize we can do with Java. We can really do a lot of things with Java nowadays. People think Java is just for backend with Spring Boot and things like that. That's not true. We can build script. We can create CLI, full-fledged CLI. We can even create terminal application like it's like 1975 in a way. But we can do all that just with Java. And I think that's one thing people don't realize. Java has a really rich ecosystem. We have so many dependencies to do so much things. We have type safety. Go tell that to Python. They don't know what's type safety. Or JavaScript. The worst thing ever for that. We have all those things. And we know how to build things. Because here we have dependency using Maven Central, things like that. And we use the same tools, but we use it different way, but we are still based on something solid that we know and trust. And we have, I think really, we have Java that's nowadays more and more something that can do a lot of things that we don't realize, because every day we build software for companies that just want a web app or a backend or something like that. But we can do so much more with it without having to context switch, because that's really the less efficient way to do things. If we need to say, oh, I need this syntax, or I need this syntax. And I think, not voluntarily, but I showed you, I do full stack stuff, so I do some Angular, some Java, and I end up doing simple codes in my file in Java because my brain cannot really separate those two all the time. Sometimes there is some mix-ins. So using the same language is really great in that environment. So if you're interested by the code, you can just scan the QR or go on my GitHub page. All the code is there. You can really play with it, enjoy it. If you have an idea, I'm really looking for that. And thank you for your attention.